somebody said, hey, we believe you're worth this value. And if you're worth this value and another team doesn't want to match it, aka Detroit doesn't want to match it, Miami does want to give this to you, and Oakland says, hey, I'm going to give you even more, but I look at it from a tax efficiency perspective. I'm going to make the most money for me and my family and my legacy in Miami in a tax-free state. For me, it's very, very difficult when the fan looks down upon the athlete because they went and quote unquote chased the bag or did what's best for them and their family.
I'm Ndamukong Suh, and welcome to No Free Lunch, where we talk to experts and athletes about how the most successful people in sports manage their money and grow their wealth.
Let's talk about loyalty in the NFL, because every offseason we see the same exact thing. A player leaves in free agency for more money and he gets labeled as disloyal. He chased the bag. He turned his back on that city in everybody's eyes. He should have stayed. But when a team extends a fan favorite, we praise that organization. We say they took care of that guy. We call it loyalty. So what is loyalty? Really? Are players wrong for leaving when the market says that they're worth more? Are teams extending guys out of loyalty or out of value? And when a team lets someone walk, is it disloyal or is it just a business move? We throw the word around like it's obvious, like it's black and white, but it's absolutely not. I've been in that position and I've been the guy people expected to stay. I've sat in negotiations where the other side of the world had already decided what loyalty should look like. So today, I want to unpack this the right way, with no emotions, not from the perspective of the fan and not from the perspective of the team, just honesty. So ahead of NFL free agency, which starts on March 11th, I want to discuss, what does loyalty actually look like in the NFL?
So what's up, Ndamukong? It's NFL free agency is here, or here next week at least. What is the biggest misconceptions fans get about loyalty in free agency?
I mean, it's one of the greatest questions, and I love that you asked the question. I think loyalty in this day and age is very much so misconstrued with a guy taking a pay cut and or a girl taking a pay cut to stay with a team, or whatever, no matter what it is, an athlete or an entertainer taking a pay cut to better off an organization versus they're finding a mutual point and understanding of saying, I'm adding value to this organization. I value being in this particular city, and you guys are embracing me and building me up and allowing me to be the face of this organization and working hand in hand to find a middle ground where the best deals, at least in my experience in business, there's a little hurt on both sides. Both people have a win-win situation versus one has to take a downfall, more particularly the athlete has to take a pay cut when these are their most important earning years typically of their life.
It's a tough time or interesting time because once again, it's a finite career, but I'm curious, like as a player in the actual building, how does that feel? You know, you're coming up on a contract year, you balled out, your boy's telling you balled out. How does that feel in the building?
Let's just go straight to it. I was in Detroit. I was drafted by this organization, and I was told I was going to be the cornerstone or one of the cornerstones of that organization from the very beginning till when I was drafted to the very end. And I had to also earn my contract. They told me straight up, you are not allowed to make more money than our quarterback, which was in the previous draft, than you. I said, okay, no problem. I respect that. I'm a rookie. Let me earn that money. So I quote unquote took an early pay cut being a draftee, even though mathematically, number one first round draft pick the year before, the next year automatically number one first round draft pick, you're making more money than the guy previously to you. But they said, no, okay, totally understand it.
And he was still in his rookie contract. For clarity, he was still in his rookie contract as well.
Yeah, because he's only 1 year ahead of me from that standpoint. Like he was the previous draft, I was the second draft right there after it. Okay. So long story short, you fast forward, and I had to earn that deal. Granted, a blessing of a deal to say the least. coming out an uncapped year, all these different particular pieces, love it and amazing for me and my family. But I also believe I earned that through my play in college. And that when they put a telescope on my life from a child till my senior year, guess what? You couldn't find anything because I had two amazing parents, although divorced and living in separate houses. They brought up a strong young black man in society in the 80s and late 80s, early 90s, and early 2000s, how to handle his business. And I handled my business. I followed my parents' rules and regulations. No different than I followed the rules and regulations of collegiate and high school sports and all these different particular pieces. But the expectation to all fans is that I was drafted by the Lions, so I need to be loyal to them. And me being, I'm disloyal because I went and chased the bag, AKA I went and earned the money that I felt that I was deserved. Somebody said, hey, we believe you're worth this value. And if you're worth this value and another team doesn't want to match it, aka Detroit doesn't want to match it, Miami does want to give this to you, and Oakland says, hey, I'm going to give you even more, but I look at it from a tax efficiency perspective. I'm going to make the most money for me and my family and my legacy in Miami in a tax-free state. Like, come on now. It's logic. No different than you go through a business deal. Do I run a company out of Seattle, Washington? Do I run a company out of Florida? Or do I run a company out of New York? It's a no-brainer. I'm going to pick between Seattle and I'm going to pick between Florida. And there's pros and cons in those two states in itself. So for me, it's very, very difficult when the fan looks down upon the athlete because they went and quote unquote chased the bag or did what's best for them and their family.
So on the team's perspective, I know you mentioned you're going to kind of look at this from both perspectives. How much does the cap actually affect these decisions? You know,
I love this. I love this question. It's amazing because I think there's a big misconception. And yes, cap is involved in all these negotiations and the understanding, but there's something called cash over cap. If you give this player or if you give this person more cash than more cash up front, guess what? It lowers their cap number. And as a team, if you really care about them, you have the ability to give them a lot more cash up front and put that with the league office and all those rules and regulations that I know enough to be dangerous about, versus saying, hey, also there's dead cap years where you can drag out I've signed multiple 1-year deals that said on paper, it looked like I signed a 5-year deal because there's dead cap years. They get to spread the cap. They get to spread my number over years where I'm not officially playing for them. So there's ways you can manipulate and be creative to get what you want and be able to have both sides win. And this is no different than business dealings. If you understand the rules, you understand how to maneuver within them and outside of them to make everybody happy, but only if you want to.
I'm happy you mentioned that because when I was reading for this, I was looking at your contracts and I was curious because after Detroit and Miami and I think the Bucks and on, you had just like 1-year deals, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, for sure. And
trust me, why you did that or the reasoning behind it.
Yeah. So once I left Miami and I was supposed to end my career in Miami. I signed a 6-year deal and that would have been 10 years and I wanted to, or 10, 11 years. And I wanted to be done playing football. That was my goal. It was always to try and reach 10 years. Thereafter, I was always going to do a 1-year deal after that. That didn't happen. I got cut from Miami, surprisingly, in year 8. And went to LA. So I said, hey, even my LA contract, I wanted a multi-year deal, but they said, we want to do a 1-year deal. We're going to look at maximizing you out for 1 year. And we both have optionality. And I said, all right, I'm going to bet on myself. I'm willing to bet on myself at the end of the day. And I enjoyed, even though it was a scary period of time for me to say, hey, I have no security after this year. I'm okay with that. I'm willing to bet on myself and say, understand, I have the ability to continue to earn at a high level, even though I don't have the security on paper. So once I got comfortable with that first 1-year deal, I said, you know what, let me keep that optionality open to saying I could either stay in LA for one more year, especially after going to the Super Bowl. There were negotiations that fell apart very quickly there. And I got a great call and opportunity to have that discussion with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Bruce Arians. And he took a huge liking to me and said, hey, I want you to be a cornerstone of this team. So those negotiations ended up saying, hey, I'm a first-year head coach to this organization. I want to bring you in and have you be a staple, a part of our defense. And we got some great pieces already. We're going to sign a one-year deal. I said, no problem. Let's go. We're going to both test out if we actually like this, because there's a new defense for me too. Todd Bowles, I've never been in that type of defense. And I've grew up in a 4-3 system. Granted, I had just came from a 3-4 system in LA. So they saw, he can play in both systems. So there's no problem. Right. And that's really kind of how it went. And then later on, as I was in Tampa, I didn't quote unquote have the best statistical year my first year there. So I had to quote unquote be loyal and take a discount to come back the next year that we won the Super Bowl. But I tied my contract up in a certain way to where if we meet all these team marks, I get benefits and bonuses. And guess what? I hit every last one of them, because I had the confidence on betting on myself and betting on my team of what abilities that we had. And yes, Tom helped with that. Yes, Levante David helped with that. Yes, Mike Evans helped with that. Yes, Chris Godwin helped with that. But it's a collective understanding of betting on yourself and your teammates and the ability to do that. But that's what fans expect on every single level. And teams put that pressure on you from a media perspective and all these different things. Don't get it twisted. They leak stuff all the time. There's insiders that are leaking and saying, hey, this player is talking about this and doing these different things. And why is he not doing this? And the team's giving him the best thing. Like, I left Detroit because it was best for me and my family, but also I gave them, nobody knows, I gave them the option to match and they didn't match. What am I supposed to do? Yeah. Let's talk about facts. Nobody knows that. So who was disloyal in that decision?
It reminds me of that show Succession, when they were like trying to get the deal done, and they were like leaking, the story to the press to make their narrative a specific way. I think most people don't understand that. They just see Shams and those guys, but they don't know the whole thing.
This is why Adam Schefter is an insider. He gets all of the details. Jay Glazer's an insider. Yeah. Guess what? They're having conversations with these coaches, these GMs, and all these different particular people. And I'm technically in that space as well, even though I don't get deep into it. But I want to know. I want to understand how things are. I know how deals are getting done and not getting done. I had insight on understanding Jalen Ramsey's situation before he left Miami to go to the Steelers. But I'm not going to share that publicly. I don't feel that's my business. And I'm not going to excuse my language on Jalen Ramsey for what he had to go through, although it was somewhat similar to some of the things I had to deal with when I was leaving Miami and got cut from Miami from that perspective. So ultimately, and there's no hard feelings. I'm still close with Stephen Ross. I'm still close with the people, some of those people at that organization. There's no hard feelings. It's a business. What I would be upset about is some of the people who made those decisions and were empowered to make those decisions, because I think there were some of the wrong people making those decisions, in my personal opinion. But that's, again, my opinion.
One thing you mentioned, talking about different schemes and team philosophies, right? Like a 3-4, you might be playing more nose or, end, or whereas in 4-3 might be, in the interior a little bit more. How much does that affect these negotiations, right? Because statistically, you might still be dominating, but you might not have as many sacks because you're in a different technique on the line. And how much does that come into play?
100%. Statistics is in Pro Football Focus directly. Pro Football Focus can make and break people's careers.
Okay.
Honestly. Okay. And they really don't know how detrimental and positive PFF is, because a lot of organizations, a lot of GMs go and look at those statistics, but they also and make their decisions solely off of those statistics that are in those ciphers. How can in a system like that, no matter how smart it is, AI inclusive or not, can say, hey, he was supposed to do this on this particular play when they weren't in the huddle? They weren't in the meetings to say, I did it the right way or I did it the wrong way. They're assuming I did it the right way or I did it the wrong way. They have no absolutely clue. I could have had a conversation, for example, with Levante David. Hey, even though I was supposed to be in the A gap and he was supposed to be in the B gap, we decided to switch. But he was in the A gap and he had that understanding. I went to the B gap. He missed the tackle or vice versa. I missed the tackle in the B gap and that was his gap. Now it's his mistake. You didn't know that we made that switch on the field. So how can you be graded on those different things? Also, let's talk about another intangible. I mean, with all due respect and all humbleness, I had terrible stats, quote unquote, from 2018 season and 2019 season. I went to the Super Bowl with LA. Guess what? Aaron Donald was a sack leader and almost broke the record. Then guess what? You backdoor that. Shaq Barrett, I had the same probably 2.5 sacks in 2019 system. Yes, we were an elite defense and played well, but we were on the field quite a bit. No shade to things that happened on the offensive side of the ball. But guess what? Shaq Barrett was a sack leader. How was I not a part of the success of 2 back-to-back sack leaders in the NFL? That's not easy.
Right. Yeah. It's
granted, yes, you had DFA and you had some other pieces, but there's a combination. Things work together. It's the ultimate team game.
Yeah.
But there's a common denominator between those two teams.
Right. How much of this are you able to do as you're playing, right? Like the rhetoric you're saying, able to say now you're away from the game. How can players advocate for themselves in the meantime? Are they also leaking things to the Schefters in the Shams, or how does it work?
I'm not 100% sure. I think, yes, you can without question leak stuff to Schefter or Jay Glazer or whoever it may be from that standpoint. Ian Rappaport, there's all these great guys and they actually reach out to players, vice versa. And some people have strong relationships with them. Some people don't. But also it's potentially part of guys' agents, unless you're representing yourself like I have in some cases throughout my career. But I think it's one of those things that you have to continue to let the pudding be the proof for you at the end of the day. Okay. You have to, look at statistics, but also I think GMs need to, and decision makers ultimately need to look at the full through line of how a player positively or negatively affects this team for success or failure, and what they're also bringing to the table outside of just playing. Because I think it's an all-encompassing viewpoint.
Yeah, I feel like in basketball, there's so many more roster spots per who plays. There's like they get the vet, that's the ninth man, the Udonis Haslam guy that like is just a leader. I feel like football doesn't necessarily have the space for those guys as much. Maybe like backup quarterback, maybe, but like you need defensive linemen to play.
Yeah, it's a specialty piece. And then it's also, 46-man roster. You need a lot of these guys to play. And then also, I think it's just a methodology. I think Pat Riley has done an amazing job in Miami to create that type of culture, in Udonis Haslam being a staple of that. But you're starting to see it in other areas. That is something that organization wants to have to build and mold that ultimately before it can actually be done. And I think that's a longevity type thing where you got to actually be willing to take that risk. And it also rolls up to ownership too, to make that final decision, because they're the ones who ultimately have to make that decision.
Last question for you. What responsibility does the player have once he gets the bag? Everything goes perfect. You get the long-term deal. Now what?
The responsibility is to show up and be a guy or a gal that is at all times doing what is expected of them, especially when it's clearly laid out to you and you have that understanding. And I've always been a proponent, whether it's business or sports, I want to find a way to under promise and over deliver. And I think that's from a play perspective, a teammate perspective, and a partner in business, and all the above, and being able to support this organization and saying, yes, you gave me these rules and regulations that you want me to fit in, but I'm going to find ways to take it to a whole nother level. And I think I've been able to show that with the organizations that I've been with, and being loyal to the main goal, which is winning. This has been great for me to just hear the other perspective. Like I said, I think a lot of players don't get to speak up during these times. One last question, I had franchise tag. I know you've done multiple one-year deals.
Players, they're getting the tags now. Give me your hot take on the franchise tag, especially right now in 2026.
I mean, a franchise tag is just a reverse way of doing a 1-year deal. I think it's a great thing, not only for the player, but also for the team. It gives them some security, but it's also a little bit of a slap in the face and saying, hey, I want you to prove it one more year. Especially if you're a proven guy, but also I think it can be a positive thing for a player on the flip side to say, hey, you just came off an injury and a catastrophic injury. I'm going to franchise you and give you an opportunity to prove me that you're back to where you are and better. And here's a big bag of money because we saw all the previous stuff that you did. Let's say you were on a 5-year deal. All those first 3 years were amazing. You got hurt. Something happened in year 4. Here's an opportunity again to show us that what you did in the first 3 years, we can expect from you in the future and more. And here's an opportunity for a bag of money, but also it's an opportunity for you to show and for us to be confirmed that we can go for it. So it's a win-win on both sides, in my opinion. But if you're a guy or a gal that's been like, I've been doing it and I've been consistent for the last 4 or 5 years, why are you franchising? You don't trust me? Just let me go. Let the market speak for itself. The information provided on this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial or legal advice. Always consult with a qualified financial and or legal professionals before making any legal or financial decisions or investments. So what is loyalty in the NFL? It's not blind allegiance. It's not taking less just to prove a point. And it's not a team extending someone out of pure sentiment. Loyalty in this league is honoring your deal, showing up, producing, being a professional, being transparent. It's an understanding the business while you're still giving everything you have. Once you see the NFL for what it is, a business built on value and timing, you stop personalizing decisions that were never personal to begin with. And that's when the conversation around loyalty finally starts to make sense. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe to No Free Lunch on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts.